All right, welcome to the recap show, Survivor Indianapolis, Advantage Island, episode seven, seven, five
Seven.
minus those three, yeah, seven. Cool. Let's get into it. So, episode seven, second round of the merge. We're getting close to that returning players challenge. The first thing we have is our food challenge. This is the third time in 5 seasons we've had a food challenge. We did it season one, season two. Did you do it on your season?
I was not in the game when it took place,
But it was
but
in your
it did
season.
happen in
Yeah,
our season.
yeah. And then I did not do it seasons three and four, but here it is in five with a
Bad
big
dream.
twist. With a big twist with this wheel of food, um, which that you could hear in the episode. John just loved this wheel. The number of times that he would just like you can hear him just cheering for whatever is gonna come up, and then it hits, and he just like cheers. I was like, John, like, I don't know which one it was, but he cheered for multiple different items, but one of the ones I was like, it's like half the wheel at this point. Like the odds are in your favor. You're gonna get what you want, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, cool. But it's a fun challenge because of the fact that it's a classic Survivor thing where it's like we're gonna eat gross things, and like what's really funny is most of these things are not really gross. Like
No.
so, if you're picky like me, some of them might be kind of gross. But like you're the odds of one of our players or two of our players not liking pickles is probably decently high. But like most of them are probably fine with it. There was spicy, so there's a little bit of a twist on that. Maybe you don't like spicy food or not very good with that. The V8 was spicy, and if you're not big on tomatoes or tomatoes like juice, then I am not. So, um, but it's a small can, and like
Yeah.
olives, not most people's favorite food, but it's not like I definitely could have gone to a grocery store and found some more odd, eccentric things. Do not want to like put that on these players that are, again, mostly not big hardcore Survivor fans. But I thought it went really well. Loved Moretta's reaction to getting to get out of the challenge. So funny because she thought she just hit like the worst possible choice with the question mark, and it was actually for her because she did not want to eat. I don't think any of it. I think it hit like the best choice for her, and the flip of reaction from like doom to like this is amazing is a great moment.
Yeah, a couple things too, just people know, like obviously we recorded this entire episode in one, or this entire game in one day, and so
Yeah.
these people just had the merge feast. They just ate
Yeah.
lunch, and here we
Yeah.
are, basically 20 minutes later. Hey, here's a food challenge. So maybe not the greatest planning on our terms, but like I think
No,
we were
I'm fine
hoping
with
things
it.
would be. What'd you
I'm
say?
fine. I'm fine
Yeah.
with it.
I mean, it made them fuller, which made the challenge probably go a little bit quicker, speed the game up. And, maybe we were a little bit behind at this point. I can't remember, but I know I was starving when I went and ate lunch. So, well, I can't imagine being a player. I do need to tell you, though, back when I played in season two, I did have to do one food thing to get back into the game, and that was
Oh,
chug
that's right. Yeah.
a can of LaCroix, and I hate sparkling water. So
Yeah,
that
that's
was one of
gross.
those things where I basically just held my nose and chugged it for dear life. And I had just ate a massive bowl of chili when I got voted out. So I was really full. So it was not the greatest thing for me. But yeah, Moretta's reaction is absolutely wonderful in this episode. And I
Yeah.
understand, like, the wheel, it's kind of intimidating a little bit. It's a big wheel. Shout out to my father-in-law, Mark Woolbright, who actually built the base for that. He found this at a residence that he does some maintenance for, and they were like, yeah, you can take anything out of this room. And so he got it for one of our classes at church for the kids that I teach and stuff in the fourth and fifth grade age. And it's just way too loud in the room we're in now for us to use. So I was like, you know what, David, take this, use it for Survivor. It looks better anyway than what it looks like in my room and sounds like in my room. So worked out great. I'm like John.
Yeah.
I loved watching it. Like, Annie had to come out and record me at Advantage Island with Moretta. And she
Yeah.
goes, do I have to go with you? And I said, well, yeah, you got a video. She goes, well, I want to watch a challenge. Like, she was just as pumped as John was about the
So
wheel.
funny.
So, but yeah, I will say Advantage Island. I know that I'm no Jeff Probst, but I felt like, it was a pretty good looking guy out there at Advantage Island with Moretta. So I'm not going to lie. Just seeing myself on camera reading paper, I'm like, hey, maybe I could do this full time.
Yeah. 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 It's funny because like a lot of the Advantage Island stuff that I was gonna have you do, you were kind of like I think you were nervous to mess it up which I was
Yes.
like, I don't know why you're nervous to mess it up. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like you're
We've
gonna do
talked it
any
through
worse
so
than I
many
would do.
times.
But yeah,
That's the thing, and I just was like, "Oh crap, I'm gonna screw this up. I don't want to mess. I don't want to mess the game up for David or give them the wrong information." Just because
yeah,
how I perceive it, and that we even talk about this with regular Survivor. There's times where I perceive how rules are implied, but you're like, "Well, actually, it could be this." Like it just happened on the actual season 47, where it's like they
yeah,
have this advantage basically, where they have to reach into a bag, and if they get a lose a vote, they can reach back in and potentially get a steal a vote, but I was under the impression that they would still lose a vote, and you were like, well, I don't know, they might get their vote back. So I think that
yeah.
there always is kind of like question marks. We try to do a good job of being pretty clear, but um, yeah, I want to make sure that I don't relay any information that's incorrect to the players to
Hmm.
set them up for potential, failure or mislead them because you're the showrunner and I'm just your assistant.
Well, and there's so much going on that day that even if you're in the player's shoes, I used to like be really like annoyed at players when I'd have to like repeat things 3 or 4 times, or I'd have to like, are you listening? Like, what's going on? And then I played in a game, and I was like, no, I get it. There's so
It's
much going
different.
on. There's just so much going on, and so much to keep track of. Trying to remember all these different people's names and all, like what's happening, all this different stuff is it's all new, and every challenge is a new thing for you. Whereas, like for the production team, we've been, you know, creating challenges, testing challenges, and working with this, like working in the rules documents and trying to edit um the like script for the instructions, and like we've been going into this stuff for months, and so it's like second hand for a lot of us. Whereas if you're a player, it's all brand new, and so there's always going to be, and even just having different people look at it, which is part of why I always try to run things by multiple different people instead of just going off of my gut, because you know there are questions that I've had players ask that I would never have thought to ask. And then or they'll try to do something live in the fly. A classic example is the first first season, one of the last challenges I ever did in the first season. The players had like a popsicle stick in their mouth, and they had to stack dice on top of the popsicle stick, and it was like you had to get to five, first to five, or it was either 4 or 5, first to first to five wins, and I did not clarify. I just did not think I'd have to. That you had to go one at a time. And a player, and it was like 4 or 5 people. Everyone else goes one at a time because they all, like me, just thought like this is how you should do that. One player picked up all the dice in one big stack, put it on the popsicle stick. I was like, I'm done, and I was just like, yeah, you win. I have to give you the win because I did
Yeah.
not clarify that you can't do that. So that was a big learning moment for me where I'm like every all these little like rules things that I think might be super obvious and straightforward and clear, I have to run by several people probably just to make sure because different minds you just think about things differently and poke holes in things differently. So I totally get the apprehension on trying not to mess things up because you
Yeah.
don't want to give, especially for Moretta, this she's away from the challenge. She can't win immunity now. She has this choice, and it's like she needs to have all the information to make the choice that she wants to make for her game. And I would not want if it was me, I would not want to confuse her or mislead her so that she makes the choice that she looks back on it later. It's like, man, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had done that. Or I wish I had known this about it, and then maybe I would have made a better choice for me.
Mhm.
Um, I don't ever want the production to get in the way of the players of my, even though it's not, it's for fun. There's no stakes really. Up to this point, it's been a free game. That's probably going to have to change soon because it's expensive.
Yeah.
But it's been a free game. You're not winning or losing anything. You're just coming out and having a good time. But even still, I just care about the integrity of that. I want the players and their decisions and their actions to be what um, affects the game, not what we're doing all like to them. So I definitely get that. But other than that, that was a pretty fun challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there to watch what
Oh, that's
happened with the
true.
food stuff, right? So I was at Advantage Island with Moretta, and I'm trying to remember. Maybe you can help me out here because she had the option of picking one of two things for the next, I believe, next tribal council, or she could push her luck and predict who she
Yeah,
thought would win the returning players challenge, and she chose to do that to get herself a bigger reward. So there was a possibility that if she got both right, she can win an idol. If she
yeah,
gets one of the two right, I believe it's a steal a vote, if I'm not mistaken.
yes.
So, what were the other two options that she could have potentially had?
I we talked about this and we went around, and I don't mean like we argued about it. I just mean like we really thoroughly discussed this because you wanted it to be less power, but also you wanted it to be less power. You wanted both options to be intriguing. So I think what we decided was whatever we give her, if she picks the power for this round, it has to be played this round.
Hmm.
So then that makes it automatically less powerful. So then it was like, what what do we give her? And I also, because I based off the video, you have two pouches there.
Hmm.
I think you were supposed. I think what was supposed to happen. And I think that you basically say this. You say, I'm paraphrasing, but you say, if you pick option one, you get to pick between one of these two sacks,
Yeah.
burlap baggies, for an advantage that you have to play this round. And I don't 100% remember what the two baggies were. I'm pretty positive there wasn't an idol in either one of them. I think it was either a steal a vote and an extra vote, or an extra vote and a safety without power.
Yeah, I was thinking it was safety without power and an extra vote.
That's what I would have
That's what I
thought.
thought it was.
So that's probably what was accurate.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like safety without power, while not super powerful, obviously, as the name implies, is basically like an idol because you can just leave.
Mhm.
You just don't get to play an idol and cancel a bunch of votes and then vote somebody else off. You have no authority on what happens in tribal council. And the extra vote in this part of the game, right after the merge, could be very powerful. So in limiting those to one round just inherently makes them less less enticing than like, oh, I could get an idol or a steal a vote. And I think Merida just felt like I haven't gotten any votes so far. I've been under the radar. I've been pretty safe. Like, why not risk it and try to get
Right.
something bigger?
Yeah, and if she does that, who knows? I don't know if we got the actual footage of her saying what happened at Advantage Island. I think the audio was kind of messed up there for a little
You
bit of
mean
the
to
strategy
in confessional or like to the players?
to the players. I don't know if she ended up telling anybody.
I don't know if she told anybody because no one really talks like, oh, Merida has this, that, or the other. In fact, I know she does not tell anybody. I don't know how she gets away
Yeah.
with it, but she doesn't tell anybody because there's a confessional. Obviously, we know she didn't get voted off in episode 7. So there's a confessional in a future episode where she tells the camera, I haven't told anybody about this, but I have this advantage, and I'm going to tell somebody about it
Yeah.
right now.
Well, and
Um,
this is a really good point to bring up for Moretta because how
yeah,
many times have we seen people go to Advantage Island and immediately when they come back, they just tell everybody what happened and everybody's just like, okay, we believe them what they said. Like everyone was telling the truth. Everybody was an open book. But it seems like
yeah,
people weren't even asking her about this. People just like I guess most of the people just like we like Moretta. We want to work with her. We don't really think of this as
yeah.
like a threatening move to us. Maybe they thought it was maybe similar to what Leah had to do when she was the odd
Oh,
person out at
maybe.
right at
Yeah.
the swap. And so maybe they thought, oh, she has to do some kind of challenge out there to try to win individual immunity. She didn't come back with a necklace, so okay, she's up for the chopping block tonight. I don't know. Nobody really talked about what was going on with her. It was more so
Hmm.
like, okay, who do we want to get out next?
Yeah.
And Moretta was just not on their radar, so she didn't get brought up. Advantage Island didn't get brought up, and in this challenge, right,
Yeah.
the food eating challenge, it was Drew that won immunity, right?
Drew won. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
and Drew was determined to win this one. I mean, it felt like he was just not wanting to lose, and I think he felt so
I
much
think
pressure after playing
he
that
knew he
idol.
needed to win it, I think.
Yeah, he was like, I'm eating whatever I have to stay in this game. I don't care how full I am. I don't care how many bags of chips I had to eat to get that idol. Just kidding. But
Yeah.
uh, he was like he was determined, and you could tell Eli really wanted it too. I think Eli felt the pressure as well. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, on the Moretta front, I think like what you said was part of why it did not get brought up, but I also think because it was the merge and you had like I think you had 8 players, right? Maybe 7 players.
Devin, I think at
I
this
think it was
point,
say I
yeah,
think it was 7. So because you had 7 instead of like the 5 or 6 that you have, and it was a longer challenge where they're eating food. It just was a lot more going on. Yeah, the mixing of tribes. You had a pretty easy vote last round where it was 6-2. Now you're gonna have to make a hard decision, and one of the more obvious people to get voted off, Drew, has immunity. So I think that they were focused on just bigger things, and And I think they also thought about Leah and thought, oh, it's probably just something like that. And Brandon may have told them that. We'll see. I don't have any video of her saying that, so we'll have to ask her in her postseason interview. But
Yeah.
yeah, Drew with potentially a clutch win. I don't, we don't know because again, the this was the part of the day where the mics started to die. Not because we weren't prepared and didn't have them charged and didn't have extras, but I didn't fully process, and I don't think anyone else did either. Maybe someone did, they just didn't say anything. But like, there's no real clear, obvious sign that they're gonna die. They just die.
Yeah.
They have a little light on them, but like in the middle of the daylight, it's not so obvious to see that. Number one, and number two, if you're a camera person videoing, you're focused on what you're videoing. You're not focused on the mic. Um, and we don't have time to go through and watch every video we video. And even if we did, what do you do if you don't get if you're like, oh, the audio is messed up? Can you have that whole conversation all over again? Or like, so some of these video clips are 5 and 6 minutes long. You can't just be like, hey, everybody. That's if you're like a lot of times Ben or Ellie would like video strategy. They would come in and video one group and video for a couple of minutes, and then they'd walk away and go video a different group of people talking. And like, if that is Mike is dead or whatever, then how you just cannot possibly fix that issue. So the mics died at some point in this round because my mic is fine during the challenge. Um, and then whatever mic we had for the players, that one died. But the receptor was still plugged into the people's phones, and so we're getting no audio or like really bad audio because it's dying.
Hmm.
And so we don't get really any strategy for this round, which is pretty unfortunate because the last one was pretty open and shut with Chris, right? But this one you had a few different options. So it's unfortunate that we don't know exactly why. You can kind of there are hints to it earlier in earlier episodes as to why Eli, but we don't know for a fact.
Yeah. No, and that is a bummer, right? And I think the mic idea was a good idea. We talked about this earlier in recap shows. It's just we won't probably use mics again moving forward. I think we'll just go with the straight audio
Yeah,
from the phone. I think
maybe
it was
confessionals, but that's about
yeah.
it.
It was too hard to monitor and it was just too wonky with everything that happened. So it was us trying to be better for production and it ended up kind of, biting us in the butt in the end. But overall, I mean, we still kind of got a good idea of what was going to happen. I think there was a little snippet we heard there of Annie saying that she was feeling kind of nervous about it, right?
And
And
she has a
so,
steal of she has a, she mentions having a steal a vote. She mentions that Eli has a steal a vote. And so there's like this threat of like, okay, are we gonna get some steal a vote play?
yeah. And that's Advantage Island, man, making everybody just share what they have. So it does affect gameplay. And we see that at Tribal Council.
Yeah,
You know, Eli gets excited. He goes, you know what? I'm gonna play my steal a vote. And then Annie goes, so am I. So they kind of, negate one another from doing, there's not really any power here now because they both kind of cancel each other out with playing this. We see the votes happen, and we see Drew try to give up his immunity necklace after the votes have been cast, but that is against Survivor rules. You have to give it
yeah,
up before you go to vote so people know that you are now putting yourself up on the chopping block to be voted out. And I think had Drew known that, he would not have given that necklace up. So he was trying to use it like an idol, but I respect the gameplay, but also at the same time, really put himself out there to kind of show who he was definitely
hmm
working with by doing that, even though he did not vote with Eli. So
yeah.
it's it's a decent move if it's allowed in the game, but like your reaction to it was just like, yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I felt so bad. So
Oh man.
here's the lesson. Here's the learning moment. Okay. Number one, I've had the thought of like I should say this as a part of the first individual immunity challenge. Like, hey, like just make sure that this is how it works. If you want to give it up, you can. There's so much going on. It's hard for me to remember that in the moment of like, oh, this is the first time we've had individual immunity. I need to make sure I say whatever, whatever. Um, I haven't double checked myself, but I think I had it in the Google Doc of the game rules. And it's also Survivor. Like, I follow Survivor rules for everything, pretty much. Um, And so it's like the lesson is for me is to put it in the script for the day, like the first tribal council after the first time that any individual immunity idol is out there. I need to say like if you want to give it up, you can, but it has to be done before we go to vote. And the lesson for the players is number one, if you think you're doing something that's busted, that's like so good and broken in the game, it's probably not allowed. Or maybe there's like a reason why. Like, there's just no way. Oh, you thought of something new? Like this game's been around for 24 years, and you just this first time player of this backyard Survivor game, you broke the game. You realized, all these people that love the game and have played it 4 or 5 times, they couldn't think of this. So like if you think you do something, and I don't think Drew was feeling that way. I just think he had an idea, went with it. But
Hmm.
like the point is, you gotta ask. Like if you think you're doing something sneaky that could blow up in your face or could really change the game, and you're not sure, no one else has done this. Why has no one else done it before?
Yeah,
In the game this day. You gotta
yeah.
ask somebody. Ask me, ask someone on the production team, hey, how does this work? As we
What?
saw earlier in the season, Chris and Mason asking, hey, if we have a tie vote, what happens? And I
Yeah,
gave them the answer, and they were like, okay, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to go to rocks. So then they clarify that, right? Uh, and that's how you should do that. If you're not sure what's going to happen, if you do something, you probably should ask someone on production before you just do it. And I don't mean that to be like harsh. I just mean like I feel really bad because it took the target that was already pretty big, made it bigger. It didn't work for him, so it backfired in terms of having what he wanted to have happen. And then he also has a bigger target than he already did. It's just like, okay, you're kind of because at this point your game is over.
yeah. I mean, it's I love the way Drew handled it. Like he didn't get upset,
Yes.
and it was kind of funny just to kind of see him slowly walk back to his hay bale and say, "Oh, okay, I thought you could. Okay, cool." And I'll just
Yeah.
keep it. And like he handled it well. But you bring up a great point because I think it was back in episode 1 where when maybe we were walking back from Advantage Island. I think Chris was asking us what happened. Like he wanted information. We're like, hey, we can't
Yes.
tell you that. That's your players on your team or your tribe or from the other tribe. They can tell you, but we're not allowed to give you any information. And so he was like, okay. So they're like, she's telling the truth. We're like, we can't tell you that. It's like
Yeah.
when Anna came back. Yeah, Anna came back from
Yeah.
the first Advantage Island game that was out there against Drew, she ends up telling him everything that happened verbatim, but like they were still kind of sus. And then I remember when Sonny was like, "Hey, you didn't lie." So it's like they were trying to ask us though, which I thought was funny because we can't give them any information. That's on
Yeah.
the players. We don't want to interfere with the game. We just want to make sure that they understand how the game is allowed to be played. And so there's been times when people have asked me questions and I'm not sure, and I'll say, "Hey, David,
Yeah.
what's the ruling on this?" And that way we can just get a hold of somebody that's going to know, right? Because if I think I know, I'll tell you. But if I don't know for sure, I'm going to go to the person running the show just to make sure that you have all the possible information you can get for this game. But it's just definitely brutal. Like you mentioned when Bailey got voted out, a classic David line there that we have actually saved as John Crabtree saved that as a special snippet that we now share on our group chat. So it's very funny when you're just like brutal. And I even
Yes.
got Ezra saying it a little bit. So it's great.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, this was just one of those pretty. This was interesting because we did have two still votes. Leah and Cameron did not get the vote, but I felt like everybody kind of knew what was happening. Eli's biggest threat, in terms of like girls versus guys, is kind of what it looked like at this point. And you
Hmm.
can't get Drew out because he's got the necklace, and Cameron seems to be doing a good job of being under the radar out of all the guys. So it was just like, okay, Eli's the easy vote out, and I think that's why it went the way that it did.
Yeah. It is interesting to me. Like, I don't know. I want to know what all the guys that voted Chris out, what they thought was going to happen next.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm saying. That's why I said last
So,
episode, like it was
yeah.
just for that round, it made sense. They weren't
Yeah.
thinking 3 steps ahead.
I didn't want to get like too far in that recap episode
Sure, sure,
because
sure.
you don't want to spoil too much. And even still, for like, for Drew still in the game, it feels like he has a massive target on his back, but there's a returning player challenge coming up next episode. He's won challenges. He could keep winning challenges. So, he can Mike Holloway all the way to the end, I guess, in theory. But like, uh, that's a tough road to go. It's a tough thing to pull off. And you can't, you should never rely on that as your strategy in terms of like, I'm just gonna win every challenge. That's how I'm gonna win the game. Like that's not gonna happen most likely. So if you're Drew, what were you thinking voting Chris? Like what? And I don't mean like what were you thinking like so condescending and like I just mean like literally. I would be curious to know what he thought would happen now, because
Hmm.
I don't think he would have voted off Chris if he thought that it would be Eli net. If he thought, I don't think he would have voted off Chris if he fully knew next round I'm gonna have to potentially give up individual immunity to save an ally. Like that's like he would not have voted Chris off if he thought that would lead him to here, right? And the same is true for Cameron and Eli, who all voted for Chris.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and then I'm very interested in Sonya because then she votes for Drew, uh, instead of voting for Chris. So it's like, is she, was she, who is she with? Is she just with the original Blue players?
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
But and Eli, I guess, is not original Blue, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, and then the rest of the girls are just happy to vote off a guy, I guess. You have, I mean, you know that Annie and Leah have been together for a long time,
Right.
and Moretta's been working with them for a long time. It's curious. I don't know if maybe, again with some missing footage and some rough footage, it's hard to know what all happened and did not happen. It feels like Moretta was it felt like the guys last couple episodes viewed Sonya as the person that could get to level the numbers, and I don't know why they didn't see Moretta in the same way. I mean, she's like the original Shebway group. Uh, you had Cameron who was close to Sonya, but also worked with Moretta too.
Hmm.
So it feels like it feels like they maybe didn't explore every avenue, and maybe it would have led to the same result. Eli had a little sneak peek of his postseason interview. He mentions that he just felt like he played a little too hard. He felt like he was just like talking, trying to get into every conversation. It would like come and go and come and go, out of just try to talk to everybody, try to talk to everybody, try to be in every conversation. And he felt like, I mean, Chris said he talked too much about Eli just a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago, and that's what Eli said. He said basically, I feel like I was like trying too hard to be a part of everything, and it made me feel like I was really into it and really like playing too hard. Um, so again, we don't have confessionals, and we don't have a lot of confessionals in like the strategic video necessarily, but um, you mentioned Eli's steal a vote. Do you think that if Annie did not know that Eli had it, that she would have played hers, or do you think she just plays it after because Eli plays his?
I don't want to give Annie too much credit and say that she's this great Survivor player because I haven't seen that from her yet so far, but I
Yeah,
would like to think that she would play it just knowing
I
that,
agree.
yeah, I would like to think that she would just play it because she's like, okay, now that it's those three, they can take one of our votes away. Now they're up 4-3. And so they can kind of swing things their way for the guys. And that would be a little bit threatening to me. So I would definitely think she would play it then.
Yeah,
But it wouldn't shock me if she didn't have an idea already, because like that was already like in her mind. Now that she has to kind of react on the fly, is she just going to be like, oh shoot? I mean, if she thinks it's
yeah,
her, then definitely. But if she doesn't, because right, I believe Eli was going after Leah at this point. That's who he votes
yeah,
for.
yeah,
Cameron doesn't have a vote, and then Drew votes against Eli, just hoping he can kind of save him with his necklace. But you know, they would have been smarter to not use the steal a vote then, right? Right. Like if Eli would have actually used his steal a vote back a few rounds ago when Neil got voted out, he would probably be in a much better spot.
yeah,
And had he also, here's what I will say. I think they would have done a better job, Cameron especially, trying to convince Sonya to go with the guys, because I think that she could have looked at them and said, okay, I think that there's a way that I can, maneuver this to work in my favor. But at the end of the day, I wonder if the girls or the women were intimidated by how athletic Eli and Drew both were, that they were just like, you know what? If we're going to get into like an individual game and there's going to be anything that's athletically involved, I don't stand a chance against them.
yeah,
And I think that they felt better teaming up together and saying, okay, we have a better chance to go up against one another. And I think that's why I don't really see either Moretta or Sonya working with the guys at this point. But good question about Annie with her steal a vote, what she played if she didn't know about it. I would like to think that she would, but I
Me
can
too.
see a world where she doesn't. I really can.
Yeah.
If she's trying to process it that fast, unless somebody in her alliance is like, you need to play that,
Yeah.
and maybe that's where Leah steps in and says something to her.
Yeah, maybe. I actually, I'm not sure that they saw Eli as a challenge threat. He did win a challenge. Um, I think he only wins one challenge before he's voted off here. I obviously Drew and Chris were seen as challenge threats, and I
He just
wonder.
won one at the Pavers Challenge, I believe.
Yes, that's all he. I'm pretty sure that's all that he wins as an
Yeah.
individual. So he wins a challenge, but again, like it also was won partially off the back of. I mean, he did a good job. I'm not trying to take away from him, but Drew beat Chris, and then Drew messed up and did not flip over Eli's paver, and that leads to Eli winning. So it's like Eli did a good job. He did what he needed to do to win. But if Drew plays it optimally, it would have been a lot closer, and maybe Eli still wins, but it would have been a closer match. I am curious. You're talking about if Neil is there, right? He has to steal a vote. If Neil is there, I don't really know how. I did ask Eli this, and I won't spoil his answer about like what if Neil's here and what if you play your steal a vote. I don't know if it changes much, to be honest.
Mhm.
Now that I'm thinking back through it,
Maybe not.
because this is why. So Chris would be gone. Um, well, he would still Sonya would have been
Tanya might be
gone.
gone.
Sonya would have been gone. It actually might have changed things because then Chris would probably still get voted off at the merge, right? And then you swap out Sonya for Neil, and now you have your fourth for the guys.
Yeah.
And I think it probably actually does change. In my
Yeah.
head, some reason I was thinking that Chris would get voted off earlier, and then maybe they would vote off Drew in the Chris in Chris's spot. But no, I think that Chris would still go in his own spot where he went
Mhm.
this time, and then this round I think it would probably be Leah,
Yeah.
and like that
That
changes
changes the game completely.
everything,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
It's
and
just
so
a
he's
matter of when an advantage is played. Like this is why it's Advantage Island season, right? Because if he
yeah.
plays it at the right time, it changes the whole entire trajectory of the game.
And then there's no chance. I mean, this is Eli's episode, so I'm fine. I'm fine theorizing a little bit here and going a little bit longer on this point. Is then the other thing is that if it's Sonya and Leah going out instead of Eli and Neil, the same way that with Eli and Neil going out, only one of them could get back into the game because we only had one man and one woman come back into the game. With the same is true for Leah and Sonya, so it couldn't come back to bite you super hard because only one of them could get back into the game.
Hmm.
So we won't spoil right now who is coming back into the game, but you know that one of the guys will come back in. And if you change, and you have Neil in the game at this point instead of Sonya, then the odds of a guy coming back in or a girl coming back in and disrupting things too much would be lower because you'd have to have a guy come back in who is not on board with a guy's alliance.
Hmm.
And like it just feels like there's only a couple of potential options of people that may have been burned by like maybe Mason feels burned by Drew, um, but like maybe not. Seth would probably be to working with anybody. Like a lot of those guys, you'd feel like should be open to working with anybody, and then you just bring back that one woman and vote them off probably again. So it feels like the game could have been flipped entirely based off of just Eli playing that Steal vote to save
Yeah.
Neil.
I mean, Eli, man, you could have changed the game, my man, but it happens, dude, and you should be looking at yourself, pointing fixing your glasses here because you screwed yourself, buddy.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about the dynamic between him and Cameron, and that's part of why he played it the way he did. And I totally understand that. And again, I won't spoil too much of what he said. My point is like that is the complication of like a season where you have people that you know really, really well. But I
Mhm.
think you almost have to like turn that part of your brain off and just think like this is a person and this is what this person is telling me. This person will not give me a straight, clear answer on who they're voting for. Is telling me like just to trust them and that's it. Like, if it was not my brother, I would be playing that advantage immediately. So
Yeah.
that's why you should be like, okay, wait a minute, just divorce myself here from the personal connection that I obviously have, and just take the person at what they're saying and what they're doing and the vibe they're giving me, and everything else says I shouldn't trust them. They're not giving me a straight answer for a reason. They're saying they don't want to vote off Sonya. They're saying they want to vote off Neil, but they're not like hard committing to either way. They're just saying, trust me. Like, if that was just some random person that Eli did not know, Eli's playing that advantage
Yeah,
100%.
trust me, bro. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
be doing the same thing, but
Yeah. So,
power of
sh
relationships.
yeah. And, shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's not going to matter now. Eli's out of the game, has a chance to get back in on our episode on Sunday. So we'll have to wait and see what happens then.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Returning player challenge has always been a key moment of Survivor Indianapolis. We've seen a lot of players like myself end up potentially going on a long run. So it just, hey, how will these players adapt? What will the returning player challenge be? Because it is never easy. It is always a lengthy challenge because you want to make sure these players earn their way back into it. I know last season it wasn't as detailed, I don't believe, just because it was like Keith and Josh going against each other at that point, I think.
Yeah, there's
So
only two guys going at
yeah,
it,
and
and
only one guy got to get back in. So it
Josh
wasn't
was
as
kind of out.
competitive. This one is definitely more competitive.
Yeah,
And
it's
I think
harder
guys
too.
you're gonna love this episode. So hopefully you guys tune in, especially if you're, really big Survivor fans. That's all I gotta say. It's just
Yeah, there we
it's
go.
themed around knowing Survivor. Let's just put it there.
All right, well, look forward to that. Check it out on Sunday. Episode 8's coming.